Welcome to your iconic image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. Stephen Scoggins is an award-winning, multi-million-dollar serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, and creator of Transform You. He's helped Fortune 500 leaders, professional athletes, entertainers, hardworking individuals, and everyone in between to exceed their wildest expectations in their life, business, and career. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, how are you doing? It's so good to see you like in the flesh. I'm loving it.
So you're going to talk to us today about the one thing that's holding us back, which intrigues me because my first thought is only one, but talk us through that.
Well, it's funny when you have a background like myself. So, part of my story is obviously being homeless and overcoming a lot of childhood adversity and things of that nature. And then I had an interesting mentor that poured into me about the age of 13 or 14. I was introduced to him for the first time. He was my dad's employer. And, he began to mentor me off and on for several years. And about the time I hit 16, he brought me down with my dad's framing crew because we were in construction. And he pulled me in his Jeep Grand Cherokee. I'll never forget it like it was yesterday. Sitting in his seat, and he says, "Steven, I got a question for you." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just here to enjoy the AC, because it was hot outside. He had the AC cranking. I'm like, you can ask me as many questions as you want. Of course, I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking it." And he proceeds to say, he goes, "What's the difference between a rich man and a poor man?" And I was like, well, 16, nothing. I'm like, well, duh, money, of course, money. He said, absolutely not. It's the way they think. And when it came down to it, that became a pivotal moment because he followed up with another question right behind that. And that question was just as powerful when he said, do you want to learn to think like me, or do you want to continue thinking like your father? So to give you a kind of an idea, my father was this hardworking individual, worked as hard as he possibly could. He was not good with money, didn't understand money principles and financial principles. He wasn't necessarily good with relationships, for quite some time. And if you contrast that to Steve was an incredibly wealthy individual who had built his business from the ground up, totally bootstrapped it. He employed, a few hundred team members across a couple states. It's funny. Our lives are kind of like almost overlaying now, which is kind of crazy.
I know, because I'm listening, I'm thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like you.
Exactly. But I think that's the power of how this thing can really shake out to really kind of help somebody, and one of the things that Steve helped me become aware of was the way in which I was thinking about myself, the way in which I was thinking about opportunities, the way in which I was thinking about my future all together was very limited in nature. And it's not uncommon when we're kids to grow up and be super excited about life. And we're going to be, rock stars and fairies and, transformers and all these different cool things that we think, we can one day turn into. And then, as you go through life, some hits them, pretty early in life, some, midlife, whatever, you start having experiences, and those experiences get you to believe that you're less than because someone in front of you is more than, or at least that's what you think. And as a result, you end up losing your way. So, the number one thing that holds most people back, in my opinion, is the way they think. Now, if you take that a level deeper, what I'm really saying is their ultimate level of self-awareness. Okay. How aware are you of your strengths, your struggles, and your blind spots? And I've discovered that most people are identify with some of their strengths. They're very familiar with their struggles. And in almost every case, they all but ignore their blind spots, because that's why they call blind spots, right?
Right.
So as you start to break these things down, you start to say, okay, well, if the secret is in how I think, how do I understand, or how do I better understand how I can think? And then how can I reprogram myself? And that's essentially what you're doing. I've basically been reprogramming my brain ever since my youth, ever since the homelessness and everything else, to basically try to say, I know there's got to be more to life than this. I know there's got to be more to business than this. I know I'm a better leader than I've let myself be. I know I can actually create environments of teams where teams are proud to be part of the organization. What has to change in me? And that's the simple question that most people forget to ask themselves.
So it seems to me that, like you said, most of us can identify our strengths, identify our weaknesses. What if we can't identify our blind spots? How do we get to that point?
Well, so there's a couple different techniques, obviously. We have a tool that we use, which is a combination of DISC values and attributes that we use to identify things that are kind of hidden under the surface. Now, you can use personality assessments all day long. There's Enneagram, there's DISC, there's values, there's strengths finders, there's all the Myers-Briggs. Like, there's a number of tools that you can use to at least take the first step in better understanding yourself. The tricky part is when you're reading through the results and you're like, man, yeah, that's me. I like that. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. That's not me. I don't do that. I don't do that. It's actually better to maybe walk over to your spouse or friend and say, I'm just curious. What do you think about this sentence? Oh, dude, man, that's totally you. I don't get defensive. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the quick techniques to kind of get there. There's trust and wise counsel with people that you admire and trust. Now, I wouldn't go out and get a third-party opinion from someone who is consistently trying to take life from you, meaning every time you get around them, they kind of steal your life, so to speak. They tell you about all the things you can't be. And I got to be honest, as a parent, we're the world's worst about telling our kids what they can't be, because we think they should be this and we think they should be that. And part of that uncovering helped me become a better father, because I'm like, what is my child actually really, really good at? How can I best position them to succeed in that area and let my biases go, which is very difficult as a whole. So that's probably the quickest and easiest way.
So in all of this, how much of it is changeable? So for example, let's say we're not really strong in something, but we want to be, or we have this blind spot, but we need to figure out a way around it. How much of it is changeable and within our control?
So it's a crazy story, but in my journey, the person that I thought I was the person I was allowing myself to be. Okay. I'm gonna try to break that down a little bit, because it's kind of a mouthful. My team tells me I talk in fortune cookies sometimes. So if I believe that I'm always going to be a construction guy and I'll never be an author and I'll never be a speaker, and as a result, I should never try, then nothing's going to change. There's nothing to mold. Okay. However, if I believe that someone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and they say, hey, look, I see you're dynamic. You come across as dynamic. You come across as passionate and bold. I like watching you talk to other people and in front of other people. You might have a skill set at speaking. Now, I've got a decision in that moment to say, yeah, I'm just a construction guy. I'm just going to swing a hammer. It's going to be, and I also have a choice to say, what if they're right? So to answer the question, the easiest way I would say is, I believe that it's 80% change and 20% foundation. So 80% of your DNA and the personality traits, not necessarily the tendencies, but the way in which you engage with the world, the maturity that you use. So we'll take a personality example just for fun. Okay. I'm what's known as a high DI. So I'm a very driven individual who loves people. Okay. Now, and then a high drive and the immaturity side, growing up, when I'm trying to build my first business and everything, I was pretty aggressive. Not necessarily downright mean, but I wasn't too far from that if my expectations weren't met. Now, in my immaturity state, had I left that unchecked, not gone through the blind spots and understood the struggles and things that I had, naturally, a lot of that was based on fear and insecurities. Obviously, if I'm running a multi-million-dollar organization, I've never graduated high school, and I used to be like, you don't want people to know that stuff. It's a secret, I don't want them to know I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just winging it the entire time, that kind of thing. So as a result, that limitation determines the level of motivation and also the level of maturation or maturity that you actually have. So the awareness starts the phase of, this is what has to change. This is what I've identified. And then it comes down to putting in the work. So I believe you can change about 80% of your core DNA, if nothing else, to take it from immaturity towards maturity. The other 20% is you. It's you. It's the way, and as a person of faith, it's the way that God made you. God made you to be someone who's really good at details, or maybe somebody who's really good at vision. God made you to be a tactician or a strategician. I think I just made up a new word, right? They made you a you see what I'm saying? That's those, and you have to go on a self-awareness journey to explore and discover yourself without condemning yourself for the things that you're not super psyched about, or maybe the mistakes that you made along the way. It literally has to be a sequence of little experiments.
So, as we're embarking on this journey, one thing that I feel like would come up for a lot of people is that imposter syndrome. And I actually did an episode on this with someone, and first of all, he said, I don't like the word syndrome. He said, because it makes it sound like a disease. He said,
yeah,
I prefer imposter phenomenon because it's just something that we happen to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we, in your experience, push through when we are feeling unsteady and unsure, but we know that we need to keep going?
You know, so I have personally dealt with that personally, obviously, you know, because of, you know, going from my background, I just kind of explained about the high school dropout thing, you know, that when I first dropped out of high school, no one asked me why I was dropping out. No one asked me, like, they just assumed that I was giving up on school and then I was just going to walk away. So they proceeded to condemn me for all the reasons why you should finish school. They didn't know that if I didn't do that, we weren't going to eat or have shelter or whatever. Like, I had to literally help my father take care of the family. That became a haunting practice because I had a business that kind of skyrocketed within 2 years after that. I went from 0 to about 6 figures, with the same guy, Steve Mark, that kind of hooked me up when I was a kid, gave me a shot. And I got cocky and I got arrogant and I got like boastful and stuff like that. And as a result, I proceeded to lose everything over the next couple of years, right? Ultimately leading me to being homeless. And as a result, what I discovered is I was chasing the affirmation of others in general. So I think in order to beat imposter phenomenon, I do like that word better than syndrome. I don't like the word syndrome. In order to beat it, you have to, one, acknowledge it exists, that you feel like you're inadequate at times. And then you have to ask yourself, why? Why do I feel inadequate at times? For a lot of us, it's because we are trying to measure up to someone else's expectations. And as a result, as you begin to remove those expectations of others and just see yourself as a work in progress, then you're able to give yourself credit for the little bit of confident wins that you get along the way. Okay. You know, if I take the Steven now that I am now versus the Steven that I was 20 years ago, there's one major difference in those two Stevens. It's the way in which they perceive the world. I don't expect myself not to make mistakes in this Steven. I don't expect that I'm going to be perfect. I don't expect that I have to be perfect. I don't expect that I'm not going to make mistakes. I don't expect that I'm not going to have to learn and grow. All of those things are a level of awareness that I think ultimately end up bridging the gap between the person that maybe you're all now and the person you ultimately want to be. In order to become that person, you have to lay out a strategical plan to become that person, identifying where you want to go, where you're at, what steps are in the middle. And if you can focus on the steps and not the expectations, then a lot of times what will happen is you'll build self-confidence along the way, and you'll realize, just like I've done, and I'm sure you've done, where it's simply a journey. Be at peace with a journey. You're going to have adversity. You're going to have setbacks. You're also going to have a lot of fun and a lot of wins along the way. Look at them in equal measure. And I think if you do those things consistently over time, I don't think you actually hear the word imposter syndrome ever again, or imposter phenomenon even, because you're becoming more confident day in and day out.
So along your journey, did you have an end goal in sight? Or because I know you just spoke about breaking it down into steps, or did you just focus on the next step?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Both in different phases. All right. So phase one, finally realizing that obviously I wasn't as successful as I could be. You know, waking up, sleeping in a car, waking up, sleeping outside kind of says, hey, something needs to change. And I decided in that moment that if I was going to go down, I was going to go down fighting. Okay. So for phase one, for me, it was all about practicality and necessities. Like I wasn't really thinking, like, my first company that I started during that season was going to become a multi-million-dollar organization employing hundreds of team members. I never for a minute even thought that. It was like, how do I make sure I get to eat this week? How do I make sure I don't have to sleep outside? How do I make sure that I actually have a little bit of money left over so I can at least reinvest in this business a little bit at a time? And it was probably 5 to 7 years of grinding it out before I ever even thought about or even gave myself, and this is important, gave myself the permission to dream. We have forgotten to give ourselves permission to dream. We have totally forgotten it. We just, life is what it always is. Life is what it, and it's such a lie. It is such a freaking lie. And during that first phase, it's all about necessity and needs. Phase 2 was like, okay, now I have some hope. I have some dream. I have aspirations. And then phase 3 became, oh, I've got something here. Maybe I can scale it. So the way in which I kind of look at it is you test it, then you scale it. So you test the business idea, you test the concept, you test a relationship, you test your financial future with, financial principles that work. And then once you see that it's working, then you scale it, and you don't scale it until then. So for me, it was kind of both. I didn't learn to really dream and really kind of plan ahead until probably, like I said, 5 to 7 years in. But now that I know how important it is, the one message that I would give everybody maybe listening or watching is give yourself permission to dream.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with dreaming about a brighter future, no matter what that looks like for you. Some people, like literally some of the Fortune 500 CEOs that I've worked with, right? Their dream is not to make millions more dollars. Their dream is to finally make it to a baseball game. There might be someone else who's struggling financially. My dream is to not necessarily chase the carrot with the Ferraris and chase all the big. I just want to feel free. I just want to feel free. I just want to feel like I've got more money than bills, and I want to feel like I'm building something special.
Mm.
And I think at the core of those, it's a phased journey. And we call it the 4 phases of transformation. Phase 1, gain perspective. Phase 2, remove roadblocks. Phase 3, organize a plan. And phase 4, you work your plan.
Mm.
When you put all that together, it's grow.
So let me ask you this. Are there blind spots or roadblocks or anything, however you want to put it, that you see that most people tend to have a particular one? And what was your biggest one that you had to overcome?
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons the personal development space is it works for some, but it doesn't work for all, is because we try to put a cookie cutter framework around everything to kind of make that work. What you remove in that process is you remove the ability to meet people where they are and understand how they got there. And until you do those 2 things, it's really, really hard to help people kind of uncover their own struggles and blind spots, right? I've also discovered that through the course of mastery, so there's 7 levels that we teach called the 7 levels of mastery. But in order to achieve mastery at anything, that is a process. So the blind spots and struggle you have today can be worked on to the point of almost inexistence later on. But by the time you get there, you'll uncover new ones that have to be taking place. Okay. So it's always a journey, right? There is no, oh my gosh, I've made it. I am divine.
I am blind spot free.
Yeah, right. And if you already feel that way, I can tell you probably what one of the blind spots might be. But you know what I'm saying? But there is this essence of, if you're making progress, one of the reasons I named my show Stuck to Unstoppable is because stuck is not making progress. Unstoppable is nothing more than consistently making progress. It's persevering through that stuff. So when it comes to strengths, struggles, and blind spots, struggle specifically, any specific struggle you have is going to show up in the negative behavior attributes that you exhibit. And that's the place to start. If you go into a meeting and you find yourself getting very defensive without really knowing it, and you yourself not even knowing why, then you start there, because that defensiveness is keeping you away from the relationships that could actually open doors.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? As far as me, I've gone through several different levels. The first major roadblock I had specifically was pride. Okay. I've always been a self-reliant individual, meaning growing up like I grew up, I identified with a life truth, at least in that moment, that was, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. In other words, if I don't take care of me, I'm not going to be taken care of, because my experiences had showcased that, no, I don't have that. Okay. Pride went from pride all the way to insecurity. Okay. Insecurity driven by fear. So again, it's about going to the behavior that is showing up in a negative fashion and saying why. And one of the tricks that I've used in the past is to say why 5 times. So for example, why do I feel scared right now? Well, I feel scared because my expectation wasn't met. Well, why is your expectation what it is? and you start going through the process, and that's how you begin to uncover kind of the hidden attributes of what created that behavior system not in the present and in the past, which helps you identify the pattern. You identify the pattern. You say, okay, I need a principle to override the roadblock. So, for example, in my father's case, I always spend more than I make. Well, the principle is you can't spend more than you make, right? Principles govern promises. And if you want to live a life of promises or build a business of promises or have relationships of promise, you have to let guiding principles guide the way and not your subconscious emotional mind.
You know, it's interesting because I had heard somebody say once that the most important promises that we need to be able to start is the ones that we keep to ourselves.
Yeah.
And just even if it's something small where, you know, okay, today I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to have cereal for breakfast. And you keep that promise.
Yeah, absolutely.
How important along the way is it for us to uncover and deal with, because I can't figure out another way to put it, the things that we're afraid for people to find out about us?
Well, I mean, it's 100% relevant, right? Because at the end of the day, your level of you achieving your aspirations, your dreams or possibilities comes down to whether or not you're willing to put in the work to get them. Okay. And, you know, I think it was Ed Milet that said something the nature of one of his biggest quotes is, I got to keep the promises that I make to myself. Right. And in doing so, there's a truth to that, because had the homeless me not kept the promise of getting up at 5 a.m. and going to work day after day after day for 4 years straight without a single day off, that would have not laid the groundwork for me to build a business, build a team, build what has become a good sized business, and then led me to open up and own several other businesses, right? If I'd have let the fear of the unknown hold me back from like moving forward just because I didn't know about it, then I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And I would dare say that other people were doing the same thing. They let the fear of the unknown shape the potential of their future, rather than defining what they want in the potential of their future and simply beginning to answer the questions, what baby steps can I take today? I will tell you, one of my biggest baby steps when I was suffering through depression and some other things was, on a couple of occasions, was simply getting up and going for a walk. You know, and I didn't know at the time, and this is just a promise I made to myself back in the day. I didn't know at the time that as I got up and went for a walk, the blood would flow. As the blood would flow, serotonin rises, dopamine rises, right? I wasn't really stuck on the cortisol cycle all over again. And before long, I wanted to take bigger and bigger steps.
So, because I'm sure all of this plays in, tell us about Transform You and what that is, and talk to us about it.
I would love to. Transform You is an amazing 3-day experience. And I say experience because one of the things that I've seen missing in the marketplace is when you do a live event and you bring in speakers from around the country. So I've got Tom Bilyeu, Lisa Bilyeu, Anthony Trucks, Amberly Lago, Evan Carmichael, and so many more, so many amazing human beings, and given masters in their own thought leadership space, is you bring them in, and so many times some of these live events become pitch fest, right? We don't do pitch fest. We do application. We teach you, we train you, and then we basically show you how to apply it consistently. And Transform You Live basically takes the framework of the system that I personally use to go from homelessness to where I'm at today and lay out a step-by-step process for someone to take a step. And one of the reasons it's been so effective over the last several years is because it's not a one size fits all. It comes from the person. All the fears, all the craziness, it comes from the person. We shape it based on their need. I wanted to create a program that I wish I had when I was younger, right? The program that basically says, I'm going to meet you where you're at. No judgment, no condemnation. You messed up a few times, no big deal. Let's talk about where you're going. And Transform You Live is just that. I bring in 12 amazing speakers from around the country, and then we take that same content, and then we teach you elements of how to shape your belief systems, how to shape your actual practicality, how to do tactics, how to create these things. And as a result, you end up with not only an amazing experience, but a one-on-one actual transformation. And I'm sure you know this, there's nothing like seeing the great aha in someone and then look at them 12 months later, 24 months later, they're married to the person they want to be married to. They're in the jobs and careers that they wanted to be in, and all because you helped them remove garbage that was in their way.
How often do you do them?
We'll do Transform You twice a year. So our next one is October 21st to the 23rd here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We are doing a hybrid event. So we're going to have roughly 300 seats live, and we're going to have about 3,000 people joining us virtually. So it doesn't matter where you're from, where you're at, you're more than welcome to attend. And I will tell you that we start actually releasing it to the open public here in a couple of weeks. And last time it moved really fast. So if you're interested, please check it out.
And how would somebody find out more information on that?
The easiest way is just to visit transformulive.com.
Perfect. So with that, Stephen, I just have 4 final questions for you.
Awesome.
First one is, what is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Best piece of advice I was ever given was this: be willing to do today what others won't, so you can have tomorrow what others don't.
Share with us one thing on your bucket list.
What's left on my bucket list is I want to do a speaking event in Europe, especially in the Scotland area, because that's my old stomping grounds. Apparently when I was I wasn't young, but you know what I mean? The generational stomping grounds, I guess to say.
So when the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
Oh gosh. I would say probably a cell phone because I'm always on it. and then a microphone. I want to spend the rest of my life giving back to the person I used to be.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And last one, how do people find you?
The easiest way is go to stevenscoggins.com, or you can go to Instagram. You can go to anywhere, but I'm more active on Instagram, Steven_Scoggins.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stephen, and thanks for being here.
It's been such a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlanasemenza.com.